So the only changes, I finally got a sawed-off shotgun to put Ignite on. However, it's not ideal. What I want to get is a sawed-off shotgun with damage to enemies out of cover, not rate of fire, which hardly helps it. With Ignite as well, and then I'll optimize that to the maximum. And I find it useful, especially soloing when enemies are a bit more frail, because my shotgun, I love the shotgun. It's definitely better than Pyromaniac Assault, the AR that I used to use. Like, I used to use the name Pyromaniac, but honestly, slapping Ignite on a good automatic shotgun, that's the way to go. I've learned for maximizing your damage on this guy, and the synergy with my flamethrower. However, the ammo can go out sometimes. Like, it definitely consumes ammo quicker. So I actually deliberately use my sidearm to kill, my flamethrower alone kills the reds usually. Just 4 rounds from my flamethrower to set them on fire is enough to take them down completely. Like, this guy is a red killer, basically, especially if a spawn happens and 5 reds show up at once as they're doing some missions I take him in, and then he can just light the entire group on fire and kill all of them immediately. Now, purples will usually still survive, 1 gout, for instance. I'd have to keep shooting them with it, which then I don't want to do, because don't want to do that often, because then I'm consuming more ammo. So that's really, the sawed-off shotgun's mostly for purple enemies, so I can shoot them with the flamethrower too. Then instead of switching to my main shotgun, I switch to my sidearm, and that combo is enough to finish a purple enemy off from full health. And then the combo of my flamethrower with my main shotgun is enough, with 1 clip of it is enough to finish off an elite from full health when I'm soloing, for the most part. Now, I feel like once I max expertise on everything, flamethrower included, that maybe I'll be able to accomplish all of that too, even in groups on Heroic where enemies are a bit tankier. I can't do that now, especially if enemies have an extra green health bar, bonus health bar sometimes. Then it's 2 cycles for an elite, but yeah, solo it's 1, and I feel like when I max expertise it'll be down to 2. But yeah, this build's very fun. It's mostly just a heroic build though. It's not tanky enough to be a tank on Legendary, and it doesn't do enough damage to do any damage on Legendary. And then, Legendary enemies are all Black Tusk, so they all resist fire constantly. So if you take this in Legendary, as I've done to test it out, I've just learned it's, next to useless. It could still, it still helps its teammates with the Vanguard being tankier, so he can usually revive people relatively well if I'm not being targeted immediately. And then the Infinite Flamethrower can still, with Vanguard too, if I time it right, can still come in handy on Legendary too. So it's not a useless build on Legendary, but my point is, it's definitely inferior. It's definitely getting outclassed by other builds at that point, and there's no point in using it. But yeah, on Heroic, I still would argue it's a very good build, a practical build too on Heroic, because it's tanky enough to still play the role of tank. It gets better DPS than my pure tank build, just because of how it's set up with the Infinite Flamethrower and Ignite talents. And it helps its teammate a lot more then, because then fire actually does affect enemies a lot more. So being able to have an Infinite Flamethrower that also can't be interrupted by EMPs or Hunters, especially in Countdown, that is also another reason why it's very good for applying status constantly on an enemy. And then he's a better tank. He can play the role of a tank. Vanguard's still buffing everyone's armor. Countdown is even better because it gives yourself armor, so he's even tankier on Countdown. And then he's able to play in close range even more often, so he's able to activate the damage increase for my teammates through the Firewall spec, and then that combined with the Striker Shield, that's 17 or something percent extra damage for teammates. Well, that also gets up more if there's groups of enemies in front of me. So massing around spawn points makes him perfect to increase teammate damage as well. So yeah, he's still a very practically useful build on Heroic difficulty, but not Legendary. Not Legendary. He never will be. Once I max expertise, he'll just have people overestimate that. It's not, you don't really get a lot more powerful. You just get when all is said and done, you'll have a decent little chunk more armor and weapon damage, and that's it. It's not a small amount, but it's not a large amount either, so it's just once you fully expertise, like plus 30 on everything, I think you'll see a difference. It'll be a noticeable amount, but that's the most you can say is it's noticeable, but it's not a large amount. So, and he would need a large amount improvement to ever be viable on Legendary.